And this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com, get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. And also, too, there's all different kinds of services you can go in there and check out that we offer you there at emailrevealer.com. One is a telephone harassment investigation. I invented a way, I thought this up out of my own head, where I can place a trap line on your phone. You got to forward your calls to my trap line, and then we can have it ring at another line. But if someone's making calls to you and their caller ID blocked or unknown caller, or even if sometimes if they're using spoof caller ID spoofing, we can trap the information with the automatic number identification and identify the person that's actually calling you. We unblock the caller ID block. All kinds of fun stuff we can do for you there at emailrevealer.com. All right. We have a returning guest, Loretta Dillon. You might recall we did a show with her about her book, Stone Cold Guilty, The People versus Scott Lee Peterson. We had her on not too long, a couple weeks ago, because we were talking about the A&E series, The Murder of Laci Peterson. And so the series finally ended, and I just watched the last episode today. And so we got a lot to talk about. Okay. Loretta, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I hear you great. Yeah, I hear you great. Although I'm messed up, I got mute. Start talking while I'm on mute. Okay, so Loretta, remind the people who you are and how you got involved with the Peterson case.
Well, I wrote a blog for 2.5 years that mainly focused on the Peterson case. I was following the case on a daily basis. We were, I had attracted a pretty big audience by about the 4th month of blogging when the bodies washed up. So I was one of the only bloggers really doing anything serious about the Peterson case. There were, of course, media like ABC News and the Modesto Bee and the various California papers that were following it, and of course it was on cable TV all the time. There wasn't much on the internet. A little bit on forums, as you know. We talked a little bit about Court TV and Web Sleuths, and there were various crime forums that had a regular conversation. But I actually read the court documents. I attended the trial 2 different times. I, conversed with people from Modesto. I had some inside people involved with the investigation who gave me information, and I eventually wrote about 900 entries about the Peterson case between December 2002 and the verdict, which was November of 2004. And as a result, I compiled all those entries into a book and entered it into. Well, I actually got an agent to shop it around. And at the time, right after the trial ended, four books appeared, and so I had a really difficult time getting anybody to buy the book. I did finally get an offer that wasn't very good, so I decided to keep it. And as a result, I've been able to keep the rights to it and edit it and change. I was able to do an update of it in 2013, which was the 10-year anniversary. And I also was able to, shop it around a little bit for a movie. And as a matter of fact, one of the producers of the movie the A&E series is a woman who was very interested in producing my book. And it turned out she was more interested in producing a movie. She did produce a documentary that didn't go anywhere, and then she was involved with this A&E special. And her name's Shireen Anderson. And I guess she wanted to do, the slant where Peterson might have been received an unfair trial, which really surprised me because I spent a lot of time with her on the phone, and we collaborated for a while, and she never gave me any credit. And she did definitely take some of my information from my book for her movie. So, you never know with something like that, right?
Yeah, don't you hate that? I would, how you Google your name sometimes, So a couple of weeks back, I Googled my name, and I found out some guy's quoting me. He's taking an article I wrote, he's putting in his book, and he doesn't even call me up and tell me. And then I see he's selling a book for $40. You know what I mean?
Right.
Hey, that's a nice little chunk of money. At least give me a call, I'll help him promote the book anyway.
Technically we have copyright violations there, but they're really tough to pursue.
Yeah.
Because, you can't really copyright an idea. You can copyright your actual words. I mean, I had to go after Marlene Newell, and I think you did too, because she did actually plagiarize me. I mean, she literally took full excerpts of my book and produced them on her site. And I had to go and, I had to confront her and say, listen, at least give me attribution or get rid of it, because you can't put it, use it as your own work. So she eventually rewrote it, sort of paraphrased me, and then gave me attribution, and I was fine with that. As long as she gave me credit, I wasn't going to give her a hard time.
Now, she was included in this Amy thing, right?
Yeah, she was in a couple episodes, but mainly the 6th episode where they have that club, that little club that they have, that Peterson is Innocent club, that she and Janie, who is Peterson's sister-in-law, Janie Peterson.
Right.
She's married to Scott's brother Joe, and his sister Susan Caudillo. She's his, half sister, and they have a little group of women who, are working really hard toward getting him an appeal. And I know the Petersons themselves had a lot to do with this special. It was obvious that they were behind the entire thing. They, and probably, like I told you before, probably Dalton,
right.
And, the whole, the old usual suspects who were always Peterson apologists, like Chris Pixley, who always appeared on Greta Van Sustern's show called, On the Record, which we used to always make fun of. Ted Rowlands, I was kind of surprised that he had morphed into a Peterson apologist. That was pretty strange. Richard Cole, who was a diehard Peterson apologist, and Michael Cardoza, who was a diehard Peterson apologist. So those guys resurfaced and had a lot to do with how the slant of this series was produced.
Yeah, I was a little surprised with Ted Rowland too, but then I heard recently, because I've been working on that Carrie Stainer, Stephen Stainer case,
Sure, know it well. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'm going to be doing a whole thing on that. You heard my shows on it.
Yes.
And I heard, because it was obviously a cover-up there. There's no doubt there wasn't a cover-up there.
Oh, there's some really crazy things going on with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that whole family.
Yeah.
Right.
And all the drug dealers around him, the bikers and stuff around him. And Ted Rowlands apparently was covering that up too.
Oh, really? As a TV reporter,
yeah,
or as what?
That was one of his big stories. He was covering the Carrie Stainer case, and he never talked about any of this stuff.
Wow, that rings a bell, and that was a long time ago, right? It does. That's right. I think that's how he made his name.
Right.
Was that story, right? And that was also, remember, Westerfield. That was another,
right.
San Diego. This guy in San Diego who kidnapped that little girl, and that was another story that was, I think, in California. That I thought Ted Rowlands had something to do with that too, but maybe not. But anyway,
we should have you come back and talk about Lisa Van Dam. We should do a show about that too. That's because I was involved. I was paying attention to that one too, very closely. But let me ask you the quick question now. Since the last episode that you and me did the last show, did you get any comments or anything from listeners that you want to clear up?
Well, I do want to correct a couple of things. First, I had forgotten, and I reviewed my trial. See, I wrote a summary of the entire trial testimony, and there was 180 witnesses, right? So that was a lot. So I went back through my notes, and I also had published quite a bit of it. And I remember now that when Amy Rocha, Laci's sister, testified, she testified that Laci was wearing beige or tan pants the night of the 23rd with a black blouse with a tiny, like a tan little print on it, like maybe flower print or something like that. And so it turns out that Laci was probably wearing the same pants that she wore that night. She was wearing those when she was found. So that I had forgotten. And I can't believe I forgot that. But yes, she was wearing at least the pants that she was probably wearing the night before. I'm not sure about the blouse. And the reason is because she found a blouse. Amy, when she searched the house with the police, found the black printed blouse rolled up in a drawer, and maybe Laci changed her blouse when she got home, but she was wearing the same pants. So that made that whole black and white thing where people who saw Laci walking the dog, which they didn't, incidentally, They always describe this, black and white, or, Scott was saying she was wearing black and white, and the A&E shows this woman with this billowy white blouse walking a dog. The only person that said Laci was walking the dog was Scott. Nobody else in her family agreed that she would even be walking the dog, and there were at least 6 witnesses in the first half of the trial who said Laci was not walking the dog at all, that she had a fainting spell, that her ankles were swollen, that she was complaining of dizziness. It was also 40-something degrees that day. I think I wrote you a note about that. It was cold that day. It was like in the 40s. Now, I don't know about you, but I know California people don't have thick blood like we do here in Cleveland. So, and 40 is cold to me. I wouldn't be out there for 45 minutes walking in 45-degree weather. They chart this whole course of where the site, the dog walking, or the people who cited a dog walker that resembled Laci. And it turned out there were at least 3 other women in that Covina area, in that 5-block area, that had dark hair and could have been, from a distance resembled Laci with a bob cut. She wasn't, that unique looking. And that there were several golden retrievers in that neighborhood, which is the most popular dog in the United States, by the way. So all I'm saying is that whole dog walking thing was such a big part of this series. It took up at least 2 episodes 3, where they continued to mention it. And, that this is not reasonable doubt at all. And neither is the mailman who did testify at trial that he delivered the mail at 10:30 and he didn't hear the dog. He testified to that. This is not new information. In episode 6, those women, the Peterson fan club, say, oh, well, we found this in Discovery that the mailman had scanned the mail at 10:30 and didn't hear the dog, which means that Laci wasn't there. No, it doesn't mean anything. Okay, the dog had been returned to the yard, and that was documented by timestamps by Care and Service. And whether the dog was sleeping or he was digging a hole or he was, maybe wandering around in the backyard and he didn't bark at the mailman that day, that does not prove anything, right? So they acted like that was some kind of great exculpatory evidence, and it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, that's another thing about the whole overall documentary, because I'm a defense investigator, so I'm used to looking at these things and trying to poke holes in the prosecution's case.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But some of this stuff is a real stretch, and other of it is, well, you had a chance to cross-examine a trial. What are you trying to say? Like the thing about they said again to the dogs about the cadaver dogs, how it followed her on the pier, and
well, those were just tracking dogs, not a cadaver dog.
But tracking dog, you know what I mean? Yeah, the tracking dog. And it says, well, that dog was tested and he was 75% wrong. Well, then why didn't you bring it up at trial?
Well, the 402 hearing. That's the the hearing. I called it a 409 last time. It's a 402.
Okay.
A 402 hearing. There were many issues in the 402 hearings that were not brought to trial, and that was a cadaver dog that I told you, lit up on the shed that Peterson had in his backyard, that alerted to a scent there. There was a dog that alerted to a scent on the boat. There was a dog that alerted to the Laci's scent and then ended at the end of the driveway. So it didn't follow her scent down the street, which would have been relatively fresh, certainly just as fresh as anything on the marina. And he didn't follow her trail down the street, which meant that her scent ended at the end of the driveway, which meant, that was it. She didn't go anywhere. And that evidence was not admitted because there was no collaborating evidence for it. So the only collaborating evidence existed with the boat launch ramp where Trimble sniffed Laci to the end of the boat launch ramp. Now, I think the defense should have used that as a way of saying, hey, maybe Laci got in the boat. Maybe Laci knew about the boat. Maybe this means that Laci saw the boat, which is what they were trying to say. Oh, she saw the boat. That's why her hair was in it, etc. But instead, they're trying to take it out, which, between you and me, I don't think the Trimble evidence is that valuable. If they took out the evidence that the dog smelled her on the launch ramp, it wouldn't hurt anything at all. It wouldn't make any difference whatsoever.
Now, what about this business about this burglary across the street? They're saying that they moved it by 2 days. Explain that.
according to the prosecution and according to my notes, and this is the reason that I went back